So customers are a big part of a lot of people's business, for yours especially. I want to start off with you, Jason, because you talked about Zendesk and how you have access to a lot of this data that shows the different trends that your customers are doing, what they're looking into. So if you can talk about who your specific customer is, kind of describe that difference. Sure. And also talk about what you're seeing, some of the trends, and how you're using AI to leverage that.
Yeah, definitely. So Zendesk is a customer support, customer experience platform. We have about 130,000 customers globally. Our platform handles about 2 billion customer service interactions every year across those customers. So we really get sort of a bird's eye view into some of the trends that businesses are having, how CX is changing from sort of the priorities, challenges, things like that, but also a lot of the customer trends, how expectations are changing, what's happening globally in different regions. And rather than just having a survey that gets that feedback through our customers' lens, we can actually measure that in a lot of ways through sort of anonymized benchmarking and things like that. So that's where a lot of our sort of insights come from. One of the biggest things that's happening right now is where the technology's at. We've hit a hurdle rate in a few different functions that are really going to foundationally shift customer experience. I think engineering and customer support are just two that are very impacted today. And when you think about why that is, these LLMs are very, very good at generating conversation, and they're very good at problem solving. And if you think about what a great support agent does, they're great communicators, and they're really good at helping customers with problems. And so that hurdle rate, we've hit from a technology standpoint, and it's going to really change the way that CX teams are run, because these LLMs have very different constraints. The cost to run them is much, much lower. They can speak every language. They handle every modality, whether it's video or text or voice. They can speak every language, every dialect of that language. And so they don't operate under the same cost constraints that CX teams have operated under for the last 20 years, where we'd love to have as many people as we could and answer every customer's question as quick as we can. But because of cost constraints, we haven't been able to do that. But that whole calculus changes in a world where you can automate more and more of those interactions. And so we've made a big investment into how we're helping our customers drive both the efficiency and automation into a lot of their CX interactions, but also giving their teams tools for them to be more productive, get up to speed, and help customers more effectively.
So a lot with productivity. Now, Ramon, you were mentioning that you're using AI in different ways. One, to help the physicians, but also to help the customers to find physicians. I mean, there's a number of ways you're using it.
Yeah, so can you guys hear me okay?
Nope.
Okay.
There we
Check.
go.
There we go.
So Northwell is the largest healthcare provider in the New York market. We have about 85,000 employees. We see about 6 million New Yorkers each year. And our main challenge is productivity. Yeah. We have more people who want to seek our services than the capacity to fulfill them. I actually have 4-month wait times to see specialists. And if you've ever been on a physician search function, you know how frustrating that process can be. You have a condition, you're having a health event, immediacy, time matters to you, and we're trying to shrink that time. And we're trying to shrink it in 2 different ways. One is reimagining the physician to patient experience. Is it right if I just speak?
Hold on. We're going to switch.
Doctor-patient is reimagining the doctor-patient experience. So when you're in a physician practice, you fight for your 5 minutes of time, right? Everybody experience this? And if you think about it from a physician standpoint, it is just as frustrating to spend just 5 minutes of time. The reality is the electronic medical record has consumed up too much time for the physician in terms of the engagement and interaction. So we're using ambient listening powered by AI in the back end to automate the interaction, to actually capture the conversation in the room, to automate the physician's notes, to place it in the electronic medical record so that that note-taking process is pulled out of the experience. What do you give back to the doctor? This wonderful experience of time. You give them more time to interact with the patient. Mm-hmm. For us, you give them more time to see patients, that productivity boost can be as high as 100%. And with the patient gets to have the experience documented and automated. So we can actually publish the experience notes in the form of text for the patient. If there's a caregiver as well, we can give them a summary of the interaction so that this very fragile moment of exchange where the patient is consuming so much information, the doctor is giving so much information, you streamline it and you increase the experience.
And that's what it's about, giving the patient more time with the doctor so they don't have to, that's a big part of it. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Now, let's talk about, it seems like a lot of the return on investment is more generated around productivity from what I'm hearing so far. Ramon, I want to talk to you because we have a question on the board. This is from Bank of America. They say they're looking forward to learning more about how companies can better implement AI tooling while delivering value and generating revenue. So this is what people are talking about. Okay, I'm going to make this investment, but how is it going to be worthwhile? So Ramon, talk about how it's shown that improvement, because you touched upon it a little bit, but explain a little bit more how you're seeing that return on investment.
Sure. So we're seeing it in a couple of different fashions. One is in terms of spurring adoption into the organization so that you're driving innovation through your pipeline. And you're increasing that capacity to exchange the most valuable of work. So how do you use AI to actually reduce the non-value-added work and supplement the value-added work? Our call center is a wonderful example of this. We have a goal of automating about 80% of calls and exchanges so that they're AI delivered and AI based, and not necessarily affecting the workforce in terms of the number of people we hire, but allowing them to operate at the top of their certificate, handle those most acute clinical engagements with consumers, and in many cases actually do more value-added functions like reach out to individuals and help them along their care journey. So all of a sudden you've taken what is historically a very challenging interchange with a consumer who likes calling a call center. AI doesn't get tired. AI works 24 hours. You can increase your points of contact. You can increase your customer satisfaction in those exchanges, and you can deliver a much more valuable experience at a much reduced cost.
Now, how about for you, Jason? How are your customers seeing that return?
Yeah, I think it's along a similar dimension. There's really two. One is really around the customer experience. All the benchmarking we've done shows that the biggest things that are negatively correlated with great satisfaction are, the reply time, time between responses, time to resolution. All of those things drive down satisfaction in a customer interaction, and a lot of those things are constrained by, when your teams are available, and AI sort of changes that calculus. You can instantly respond at any time of the day, and really sort of improve that customer experience around interactions where you don't have to wait for a human being, that where automation is the right fit. And so along the customer experience line, that's really driving sort of a better interaction, better brand loyalty, and just a better experience with your customer base. And then the other side of that is really margin enhancement. So we estimate about $350 billion is spent on CX labor per year now, about $50 billion on CX technology. And I think there's just huge opportunities to think about how to optimize some of that spend and improve operating margins in the places where that automation makes sense.
And for people who don't know what CX technology, can you quickly?
Yeah, so that's really the whole tech stack that's supporting your support operations. So contact center tooling, telephony, products like Zendesk, that whole space, that whole stack that supports that. We think that there's just some of that labor spend will shift to technology spend around LLMs, inference costs, the technology to actually drive that automation, but there'll also be optimization within that spend over the next few years. So.
Now, what about when it comes to, because everything seems good and we're doing all these great things to help productivity, what about some of the challenges that you've seen as you started this, when you first started implementing AI? What are some of those and how did you deal with it, Jason?
Yeah, so I'm usually helping our customers with those challenges, but
that's your job.
But yes, exactly. So I think some of the biggest challenges is I think customer support teams historically has been a people business. How do you scale your teams to support your growing customer base?
Right.
And historically have been very maybe underinvested in from a IT data perspective. And now we're at the shift where all of those sort of like core foundational skills are really, really important to making your investment in AI successful. And so I think there's a lot of CX teams that are thinking about how to reskill, how to bring in new people with system integration knowledge, with data analytics knowledge that are able to sort of like understand what's happening, understand the metrics, design the systems, bring in the right data. And that's just a new motion for a lot of our customers. And so that's often where we're coming in and trying to help them use a tool that's easy to implement, administer, but also work across the organization to bring in the right data from product and engineering and content and marketing to sort of enable the automation that they need within their business.
So having that data all in check and information.
Definitely.
Ramon, talk about one thing you had mentioned when we were talking earlier is about this fear of the unknown, trying to get over that as well. I'm sure there's other challenges too that you've seen.
Yeah, so we're in this early phase, very early innings of what is AI, how does it define the future of work, what does it mean to work today? And I think like anything new, there's this fear of adoption. So in my function, we've implemented 4 things. One, we had an all-employee call, a town hall about a month ago, and I told my staff, no one will lose their job. We may not hire more people as a function of what AI can enable us, but let's take the fear out of the adoption cycle, and let's get you to experimenting. No one's going to lose their job. The second is we require boot camp training, just the basic functional training on what is it, what can it do, what does it mean to how I work. For a knowledge worker, it's got the opportunity to revolutionize how you actually practice your function. So how do I spur ideas? How do I spur use? Thirdly, we'll do our strategic retreat. We'll do our long-term roadmap as a management team, but we'll do that as an annual process because the speed of change is pretty significant in this organization with this particular technology. And then lastly, we've created an ideation fund, a bonus, if you will. So we parked $100,000. We're going to give out $10,000 bonuses to people who come with ideas so that we can then implement it. So it's one thing to have your roadmap and an idea of where AI is going to take you. It's another to have fresh ideas brought to you from the rank and file and staff who's actually implementing this function.
Wow. And you're getting ready to deliver that first bonus?
Yeah, so
there
our first bonus, we've got a really interesting digital use case where somebody's reimagined some of our content development process, and we're going to cut our first check.
Very good. Now, along the, I'm going to bring up one of these questions that we have because it kind of ties into what you're saying. It's a question from Elevance Health. There is a concern that AI is being overhyped. So with all that you were saying, you were telling to your employees, do you think it's being overhyped? Or?
Yeah, so I have enough gray hair that I remember a time where the internet was this exotic thing, and the use cases for it weren't very clear. And think about how far we've come. I remember I was in business school when I got my first Facebook account, and I thought, isn't this cute? This ability to interact with my classmates and see nice pictures. Now imagine a world without both and the economic engine that Facebook has come in terms of an advertising platform. And I don't know that we really understand what this will look like 10 years from now, but it is here and it is now and it's providing tangible value and benefit. And I do think the speed of change is one of those things that you're either going to be ahead of this curve or you're going to be a victim of it. And it has a tremendous opportunity to displace much of what we traditionally do as knowledge workers. So how do we train people? How do we think about deploying that productivity in a very different way and in a value-added way? Just like any other tool, labor's being divided, man versus machine. Machine is becoming more capable. How does man interface with that machine to produce the highest and best work for the benefit of their customers?
And speaking, you're talking machine. If we look ahead to the future, something you said stood out to me, Jason, when you said one day, bots are going to be talking to each other, machine-to-machine interaction. I mean, is that where the future is headed? Are we there already? And where else do you see it going from here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's closer than we think. It's good timing. It was just Apple's WWDC yesterday, and we saw sort of where Siri is going, right? And Siri, all of a sudden, these models, have the capability to have memory. They have access to the different tools we use in our personal lives, whether that's your email inbox or iMessage or SMS, and they're able to interact with those tools. And so I think not only will businesses see more automation within their business, I think personally we're going to see a lot more automation in our lives. The ability to say, I'd like to return the sweatshirt that I ordered last week to Siri and have it be able to find that email, find the order number, and write an email to that back to that company to start a customer service interaction. That's going to sort of change the whole dynamic of these sort of painful tasks we have in our day-to-day around reaching out for support or doing an exchange or these types of things. A lot more of that will be automated. And when you think about personal automation meeting business automation, we end up in this sort of interesting state where there will be more LLMs talking to LLMs, resolving issues between two parties. And I think we're in very early innings of, do those things happen over the traditional channels that we've all used as humans, like email and text? Are there new protocols or APIs that will be built that sort of connect those systems in a deeper way? All of that infrastructure is still very much in flux, but I think much sooner than we think we're going to have machines talking to machines, resolving so the mundane of support interactions, CX interactions that have historically been all human to human.
And we have probably about 3 minutes left. Ramon, where do you see the future headed for them? I mean, what are you excited about?
I think we get to really reimagine how to deliver healthcare from my standpoint. I think AI is disruptive in the most positive of senses. Our biggest challenge is how do I deliver better health for all with better outcomes at a lower cost and a better experience. And nobody would have rightly designed the healthcare system that we have de novo in this country. It needs a lot of help. On the delivery side, we're seeing margin compression like never before. 2 years ago, 2/3 of healthcare lost money. Last year, about half lost money. There are only a few tools that are going to help us really reimagine how do we connect people, how do we connect to patients, how do we rethink our workflows, how do we do that in a way that improves the experience. And I'm super excited about where AI has taken us.
Excellent. Gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank
you,
you.
Lisa.